So I think I'm on Malachi, but it doesn't really matter. So Malachi, we're talking about combat and tactics here. What are the challenges of keeping combat encounters engaging and varied for warrior characters across different genres?
I think one of the biggest things is you want to make sure that they have terrain where they can employ tactics. Like, say, we'll just use a swashbuckling duel. Maybe you start in the kitchen or a dining room where you got tables and chairs that you're going to be on and off of. You're then going up a set of stairs, and eventually you're going across the peak of a roof. You know, I think that is the biggest thing. It's just keeping the terrain varied, um, keeping your enemies a little bit varied, maybe some on like orcs, maybe riding something if you're in a fantasy game, kind of stuff like that.
You say keeping terrain varied. That's all well and good, and I'm again, I'm here to do devil's advocate sometimes. But if we're in a kitchen, and once again, I'm the player, I don't care about this. I just want to roll my die and see if I hit and move on to the next thing and steal its loot. How can you encourage that person to engage with the terrain more?
The person you're fighting is engaging with that terrain. Like, say you're in the kitchen, you're by the fireplace. The guy you're fighting grabs a poker and throws coals at your face. Well, now you got to make a save or something, react to that. That's going to throw you off balance, and maybe they're going to get a bonus in their next attack. You do this enough, they're going to go, wait a minute. If I do what he's doing, I could get bonuses. So your hope is that they pick up on what you're throwing out there.
I want to say this in some very clear language because Malachi had a really, really good example there. And I think it's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit when we talk about Palladium games, but I think that many game masters, and to be fair, players miss out on. Yeah. The rules are supposed to be a framework, not a law book, number one. And find ways of giving yourself an advantage. Yeah, exactly what he said, but it's not in the rule book that I can grab coals and throw them at somebody. Right. That's what a game master is for. That's the game master, arbiter, referee, storyteller, game mother, whatever. That's that person's umpire. There you go. That's that person's job, is to go, this might not be perfectly in the book, but it just makes sense that this might. And again, how do you adjudicate that at that time? Well, let's see, there's no direct rule for this. So Malachi had a great one. Roll me a quick saving throw versus XYZ. Did you make it? I made it. Great. Then nothing happened. You threw the coals bounced off the wall. You thought, did it in haste. You didn't want to touch them, whatever. It bounced off the wall, and now it's the person's attack. Or, he failed to say, you throw the coals and one goes down his shirt and he's like, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. And he uses up his action for that. And then you go back and forth, whether you do the, what are you doing now? Or you do the whole, just interject and start talking what you're going to do. That's something that the game master has to be able to adjudicate, and players should be looking for opportunities to do that, but not whining when it doesn't work every time for them. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to go to, got another, okay, we'll get to that in a moment. So, Mr. Max, what are the challenges of keeping combat encounters engaging and varied for warrior characters across different genres?
I think like Malachi, give a very good answer about using terrain and stuff like that. That's very important. And especially when you have stuff the fighter can do a shove. Well, if you never put a fight on an old bridge or something like that, right? Who the fuck care? Why would I fucking shove that guy when I can just hit it with my sword and kill some damage, right? Well, if you fight on the side of a chasm, then shove becomes very strong, right? You want to incite people to use more the terrain, stuff like that. Force them to play smart by making the challenge, making the encounter more challenging. Make the encounter difficult, that they have to use their brain. The encounter is not going to be balanced. You have to create an advantage for yourself. You have to choose and that could be very much so in the field of the fighter. You have to choose the battlefield, where are you going to engage? You plan where are you going to engage the enemy, right? We were talking earlier about out of combat thing. That's one thing you can do. You do some recon and you make a plan and stuff like that. Very fighter-ing thing to do. But then come the fight, you chose the battleground, you managed to draw the enemy there. Now you use that battleground to your advantage. So Malachi did a very good answer there. But I wanted to talk about a different direction, where you said like the challenge of keeping the fight interesting. How do you say that? Keeping combat encounter engaging and varied.
Mhm.
For like, I think that's something that a lot of system have a real problem with, because oftentimes when you're the martial character, round after round, you're gonna stay in your 5-foot square and say, "Well, I attack him," and you're gonna do the same thing round after round after round, and like the statu quo is always maintained, basically just like, oh, some hit point have been chipped here and there, right? But the situation didn't change. I think that's a failure of the system. Oftentimes, there's game that address that better. But and for me, like, yes, you can try to inside your player. Well, try to like vary that description, but even varied description for me, if there's no like mechanical difference,
Mhm.
at some point, like there's how many like so much thing you can, so much way you can say I swing my sword, right? Just like before it just becomes swing,
Right.
swing, right?
Yeah.
So this is something like I think it is a challenge oftentimes with martial character, and another challenge that when you go in more modern game, and then you start having firearms. Now everybody's an expert in firearm, and they all want like hyper realism. That's definitely a challenge. Another challenge with the martial characters, or the tempo thing. Swinging a sword or shooting a gun is much faster than maybe casting a fireball, right? We understand that casting a fireball, you have to do those incantation and little dance and stuff like that, right? Just like, so
Well,
there's also
we've
this
talked
thing.
about something similar. You're talking about the guns, right?
Yeah.
With martial arts. So I used to take martial arts when I was younger, and the game master would say something like, "Oh, he goes to punch for your throw." I'd be like, okay, well then I block this way, which prevents him from actually having attack because I would lock up his arms automatically. There's literally nothing you do. Well, that's how the game works. Well, no, that's how fighting works, dude. You can't do that. Same with the guns. Like, it might not make perfect sense, in the real world.
Mhm.
And we have to understand, like, those fight, like you're gonna roll once for your fight, but you're not swinging your sword just one. There's supposed to be an exchange. But then again, like some systems don't sell that fiction too well because you're targeting a static AC, and no matter the number of character attacking the guy, the AC doesn't change. So like, why is he like fighting against me when I'm fighting him, but also fighting against him when he's fighting him? Like, like those. So there's this thing like that. I think those are challenges. Like, I think oftentimes the fighter have been done dirty because of that. Some game do try to fix that, like Axe, make the fighter much more interesting. But that's for me, like Dungeon Dragon specifically, oftentimes like kind of miss the mark on those martial character on that sense. I'm not familiar with Palladium, so I don't know, like or Palladium, I don't know how you say it. So,
Palladium.
Palladium.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I like about Savage Worlds. There's a lot that you can do as a fighter.
Yeah.
And it's baked into the rules, and even so, it's so easy to educate. I remember with the previous version on the Savage Worlds GM podcast, they're like, 9 times out of 10, you're going to educate anything in combat either as a push or a pull from the rules. That's it.
Yeah,
Like
but
he was saying, the one guy was running a game, and one of his players wanted to grab this creature by the tail and swing around. He goes, like, okay, well, this is what you're gonna roll. He says, like, it's essentially a push because you're moving something away from you,
or pulling him by the tail.
Yeah,
but
excuse me, but we're talking centripetal force because I'm actually swinging him around.
Oh, that's true. But that's the thing about, like, like with like, and another like the fucking cliche of like the quadratic wizard and linear fighter, right? Just like it's a cliche for a reason, right? So those are for me like when you select challenge about like keeping the fighter like interesting. I think like for me that's what comes as challenge. And I think some system address it, all of them don't. So
Okay, fair enough.
I don't have an answer other than that for you.
No, that's good. So Akito, what are the challenges of keeping combat encounters engaging and varied for warrior characters across different genres?
The biggest thing is the terrain. This is a problem across all genres. From fantasy, I'm going to just hit my sword over and over and over again, to even Sci-Fi, when you're just okay, I'm going to pew pew. I'm just going to keep on pew pew. It's gotta have the terrain, and fortunately, it's you gotta promote. As the GM the how to use the terrain sometimes. So okay, well, you're beating the bad guy. My science fiction game. We're in a gunfight in a hallway. Well, there's conduits in the walls. Gas can come out, or you shoot behind them. You blow through a door, and you vacuum them out. Well, it's going to mess everybody up, but use the you gotta promote that. You got to get that going. In Malachi's example, in the kitchen, as the GM, I would disarm the fighter. Take their arm, smack it over the counter so they drop their weapon. Well, they still have the knives right behind them that they can grab and use that. It's not going to be nearly as much damage, but you're getting engaged with the environment, and sometimes as the GM, you gotta start that. You got to grab the chair and bash him over the head.
But it does less damage than just hitting him with a sword.
Yeah, well, here's what you got.
Well, you got to pick your sword up. I can let you grab the pot or pan as a free action.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to bend over and pick up your sword.
Back here.
Well, one of the things Mr. Max mentioned was about shoving. Well, a shove can lead to a knockdown, which can lead to not having to murder somebody. Do you yield, sir?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if it's a sword at his throat or a pistol at his face. I yield. Okay, the fight is over.
Yep.
And only an absolute idiot is going to keep the fight going after that point. Of course, now if you have murder hobo characters that just shoot him in the face anyway, well, then you, as a game master, you have to build in some consequences for that.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a big thing in this thing as well. Like, not everybody's going to fight to the death and stuff like that. So there's also that thing that should be considered. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
so, and I'm going to open this up. You guys can jump in however you want on this one. So how do you integrate teamwork and coordination, such as the effective use of magic or the magician character in battles when playing your warrior character in a group?
When the mage go rogue, the fighter kills him.
Okay, well, that's one way. Not what I was looking at. But
one thing is, you gotta. I mean, your warriors are typically going to help defend your wizards. I mean, that's a bit of teamwork there. But really, I think for putting opponents at a disadvantage through your actions, so that the other players can get a bonus.
Yes.
Like what Mr. Max said when he was saying about how games don't really, reward players for certain things in combat, like tripping somebody. You trip somebody, they're going to take an action to get up.
Yep.
If somebody can act before then, they're going to get a bonus to hit them.
Yeah, especially with the rogue, right? Oh, you attack somebody that's down, backstab, right? Just
Now, this
or
is
whatever they call
one
it.
of the things I did once, couple moons ago. I was playing a fighter. We were party was 5th level, and our opponent was 9th level. We were doing 5th at D&D, and I was a pretty strong character, and we knew that we were not going to defeat this guy easily. It was going to be a bloodbath. So I ran up and I freaking grappled and I suplexed him, and immediately just gave all of my allies an advantage on every single attack, and he could not break that grapple hold against me because my strength was so high.
That is sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, you guys are the panelists. Go ahead.
I say also, if you make like a encounter where the goal is not just to kill the guy, the enemy, right? Sometimes you want to capture him and stuff like that. Maybe the fighter is better on that. Like, you know what? You cannot like capture somebody with a fireball, right?
Yeah.
Unless like though you want to really like
you can.
Well, unless you really want like a fucking like, and again that's waving like, oh yeah, the fire, and then he's unconscious on the floor, and then you can revive him. No, he's fucking dead, right? He's fucking like.
Let's flip that around, because you make it, and I'm not trying to be facetious here. You make a really good point in a normal situation, but we're now talking battle tactics, right? A typical warrior, since he's the one that's in the fight, probably doesn't want to keep taking hit point damage or whatever, wounds, whatever, all the time. Huh. You said you're a necromancer, right? Yeah. Can you speak to the dead? Great. Burn it down. There could be a time for that. I'm not trying to be facetious. What I'm saying is you can think tactically sometimes like that, where the guys inside like, oh, they're never going to kill me. They need what I've got. Yeah, they do.
But it might not just be like talking to him. Maybe you want to bring him back to like for justice, ransom him.
Right. Yeah.
Like
right.
There's like many situations that like killing might not just be the situation. Maybe you want to subdue, right? And then maybe the fighter then can be useful for that. Or maybe you want to gain some time. I like system when magic, if there is magic for the player, which that's a different topic. But I like system when magic is high risk, high reward, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to cast this big spell, it's going to take time. Maybe it can take more than one round. And then you need the fighter to defend you.
Why don't you play Earth Dawn? I'm going to keep mentioning it. I'm going to dive down this rabbit hole a little more. So we're going to stay on this topic of integrating teamwork. How, as the players, and you're on the player side now, do you integrate teamwork aspects such as effective spell use tactics without metagaming, or do you even care about metagaming? So for me, I have a pet peeve when somebody's at the table, and we'll just say Mr. Max is a wizard because I know he loves playing him, and then Malachi is the fighter, and he looks over like, hey, you need to cast hold person so that we can go in and do such and such. And I'm like, don't fucking tell me what spells to cast. Then again, is there a way you can do that in character that makes sense?
As the fighter could very well know he knows hold person. So because your party members, your people in combat situations afterwards talk to each other and expand on what they can do.
And maybe you saw something, or you can just like say, "Well, is there a way you can paralyze this guy?" Right? Just like just like, and then not saying it like, "Oh, cast all person," right? There's like you can be a little more sophisticated about it, right? You just like,
sure,
do some finesse.
But when you're planning for the assault or the mission or the room entry or whatever, you can sit and talk about those things. Right. Hey, I saw you paralyze somebody before. Can you do that again? Well, I got a 50-50 shot. Okay. So what do we do if you succeed? And what do we do if you you can think those things through.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. You can plan all day long.
Group of competent hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a strong word there. Confident.
You're required to be at least.
But the important question is Mr. Max playing a dwarven wizard?
Oh, yeah.
So the answer is no.
What other kind of wizard can you play, right? That's the only way to play a wizard. And the only way to play a dwarf.
All right, with those hateful comments out of the way. Okay, I don't know who we're on. I'm going to start with Mr. Max. It just feels right.
Wait, I wanted to add something about also I like when system that give like warrior type character, martial type character, like stuff maybe you can boost your ally initiative or swap two people initiative or give extraction, like when you have some other stuff like that, or like give a bonus something to the guy fighting next to you, right? I think this is also like when the system have way that the martial character can help is ally. I think that's also a good thing. And again, something oftentimes that not all D&D, some version of these sometimes did miss. Some, it didn't miss. Like so many.
I think that's a great way of utilizing both fumbles and criticals. Is on a critical success, sure, you got extra damage or whatever, but a lot of times is, what is it? The 2d20 system, you've got momentum, so you can pass that on to possibly another character. Year Zero Engine has something similar to that, where some of the things you do directly affect, but even if it's not written into the game, you got a critical hit. Well, that might not mean much for you. You're fighting a goblin, you got a critical hit, but your hit was so staggering that, okay, everybody this round goes before the enemy, or everybody this round gets a +1 to hit, or hey, you two are fighting the same guy, so he hits him so hard he's stumbling a little bit. You just don't roll a 1 and you hit, or whatever. I'm just coming up with crap off the top of my head. But there are things you can do. Synergize the teamwork instead of just being like, okay, you do double damage roll. No,
and you can wing it on the fly.
Yes.
I like when system have some support for it.
Mhm.
Play other games sometimes. Some of them do great thing, and then
Mhm.
those are ideas you can steal
No, absolutely,
Yeah.
when
absolutely.
you make your own Earthbreaker.
I do know that Savage Worlds does have its own set of edges where it's about commanding, about leading
Yeah.
people, and you could do that kind of stuff with the other players. And I think there are ways to do it in the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game, in fact.
Yeah. And 4th edition of D&D had a
Warlord.
class all about that. And for all that the aid that 4th edition had, this was one class oftentimes that posted like, well, you know what? That's the one thing that should be brought over.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
I'm not the
There
one
were
saying
some-
that, but
No, I think a Warlord would have been fantastic in 5th
Yeah.
Ed. I think that's something that's missing that in like the minion rule. So you can get your fighters that are
minion rule.
going through these mass hordes of enemies and just cutting them down like Conan.
The problem that I had, I think it was the Warlord, I could be wrong, was that was the class that really made it feel like an MMO.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
Well, all of them.
It's a
Well, fair.
the core of the
mean-
Warlord is you are a leader.
But
You
Fifth Ed
are-
D&D has the Battle Master, which allows you to get control of the field and move people around.
And the Battle Master, if I recall correctly, that was like designed by Merle, based on the Warlord. It was
Okay.
like that was like something an addition later. No, that he was trying to bring back the Warlord because people were demanding it. No, I might be wrong
No,
on that.
Battle Master, I believe, is in the core book.
Yeah,
No,
it's in the core book.
yeah. Oh yeah. Right. You're
Yeah.
right. It's one of the archetype. Yeah, right. You're right. I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of something else.
All right, let's slide on in here. By the way, for all the people who play Dwarven Wizards, I'm going to say it again.
Wrong.
Earth done.
Drink.
Drink. We're going to be totally drunk today. Actually, I don't have alcohol in front of me because it takes
I
$50
do.
super chat for
Am
me
I
to
the
drink
only
now.
fucking idiot there?
What's that?
Am
I
I
only-
the only one?
I only drink on $50 super chats now. So,
You're
Saving his liver.
so this one might take a. I see what kind of direction this goes in. All right, Server the Keto, can you share a memorable combat encounter involving a warrior character? You don't have to be the warrior. You could have been watching. You could have been a player at the game. You could have been the game master. Does not matter. But a memorable combat encounter involving a warrior character and how the tactics used impacted the outcome.
I just used all my ammo on that. Just just the most memorable to me was causing the suplex and allowing my allies to get advantage.
Now, was that in a Palladium game?
No, that was a 5th Ed D&D game.
Okay. I don't know the 5e grapple rules, but to be fair, the Palladium grappling rules are really well done, and that's one of the things Heathen Dog and I talk about a lot. Is like, I can't believe more people don't take wrestling and use the grappling rules because you just took somebody out of the fight.
Excuse me. That's those because they're very obscure rules. I mean,
Yeah, you do have to
course,
kind of
all
dig for them.
Palladium
That is
rules,
true.
You have to dig for that, and depending on what version of Palladium. I mean, the biggest problem Palladium has with anything other than fantasy is pew-pewing, and you're down hallways, pew-pewing, not running up and punching people. So that's the biggest problem with that. But it's
I have more bar fight.
More part.
more bars.
I mean, to be fair, one of the things we've been really focused on in this so far, and we have talked about a little bit about guns and so forth, but we really haven't focused a lot on the science fiction side or the modern side so much. So let's bounce down to Malachi here. We know he's going to have a riffs anecdote, right?
Actually, kind
or
of,
not.
yeah.
Okay. So again, memorable combat encounter involving a warrior character and how the tactics used impacted the outcome.
Well, this one's a little bit of a funny story. This is the owner of my friendly local gaming store. He's running one of the 2E box sets, The Night Below.
Okay.
And at one part, there's this lake with like a body in it, and one of the players decides in his infinite wisdom to swim out there with no armor or anything. Turns out there are a couple huge catfish in the lake that try to eat him.
What is it? Can't you game masters leave water alone?
That
He
was
knows.
in
He
the
knows what I'm
module.
talking about.
So they ended up taking the archer and flying him out over the water to shoot the catfish to save the player. And the one thing that I've noticed especially if you're playing in sci-fi, is players pick up on tactics from FPSs.
Yes.
I had a player when I did a ran a Cydrus one shot with a couple of my players. When one of them couldn't make it, we ended up to keep going with this when one of them couldn't make it, and the one encounter he was going between cover to get better shots, to get it, to not get hit, like you do in video games.
Well, it's also kind of what you do in the real world. Actually, I was going to go the opposite route with that. I see people use the video game thing stupidly. I'm going to step out and then I'm going to step back. Dude, you know how long it takes to pull a trigger when somebody's doing an Overwatch? Vice you actually moving? This isn't like a video game where you're like all over the place. You're done.
Yeah, but I will say, Max, you do have at least some training from being in the military. This guy wasn't in the military.
Yeah, but you watch a movie. I mean, come on. You watch any movie and people are hopping from cover to cover.
Never watched a movie before.
Yeah, this is
Never? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's like a 22-year-old. I
Fair.
think he plays more video games.
I'm not trying to bust his balls. I'm not. I mean, hopefully, if you've watched any sort of, if you look at Aliens had tactics. It might, the camera angles might not have been great for it all the time, but they had tactics. Predator wasn't always the best tactics, but they had some.
And cover gets destroyed.
Yeah, just like.
Yeah. Well, ain't got time to bleed. But like what was it when Mac was down there? Over here. Anyway, let's no more movie quotes. Let's
Well, apparently the Archie took on the Predator.
Archie took on what?
The Archie comics.
Okay.
Oh yeah. They're publishing the yeah.
Yeah, I found there's 2 graphic novels. I found the one at a local bookstore.
Well, they already did like Betty and Veronica, so it's not a big step from Predator.
Yeah.
Wait, no. Okay, I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Max, memorable combat encounter that you had involving warrior character.
I just played this Monday on like I mentioned, like an Easy D6 game, right, by DM Scott.
Crispy says you better have some examples.
I'm gonna have some. I can give more than one, but like I want to talk about this one first, right? Because it was a very cool. Like the system is very light, but there's something very cool that I like. That you have those karma point. It's a D6 system, and you can spend those karma point to increase your result. And if you fail, you gain karma point, right? So you always, every time you roll, basically you have a choice, right? You roll like, oh, I need a 4. I rolled a 3. Do I want to spend a karma point, or do I gain karma point because I let it be a fail? And if you bring it to a 6, you make it to a crit. And if you make a crit and you roll again and you roll another 6, you can do another strike, right? And you have those enemy that die in one strike, basically. So now, like if you manage to save a bunch of karma point, you can get in my character at the sweep thing, so he can attack every enemy in front of him. And if you kill an enemy and you have a crit and another strike to do, you can give it to the next enemy. So basically, it's a cleave, right? So then you have like this situation where there's a horde of enemy. You just bust down a door, and there's a horde of this like little mook, basically minion, like just running down to you, and you just like step back, and you let them come to you, and then circle you, and then you just go bam, 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 and you like slice and slice and slice. And I was rolling like fire, and then like when you don't, and you have like a bunch of karma point you can spend, so then you can like at some point, like in one round, you go to a bunch of them. That was like, that feels very cool. You feel like you're a competent character, like just sweeping your sword around, right? And just killing those people. You expend the resource to do it, because then after that I was kind of like, took some hit, and I was like draining karma and stuff like that. But I was like you get like this very cool round, and then like Crispy was our DM there, and then like the enemy react to that as well. At some point they say like, shit, it's time to run, right? This guy just killed a bunch of us in one round. Maybe it's time that we go back from where we come, right? That was like that leave you this impression you're just martial character that feel competent, feel you can do something, right? And you're just like laughing your belly up, right? we didn't talk much about science fiction. We did a traveler game at some point. Because we often have games that are like, we always have combat in our game, but there's often like not much combat. At some point, we decided, you know what, we should have a game that is heavy on combat. So we decided we're gonna play those like space pirate that board a ship, right? That was very cool, and we just like it was like this. Basically, the whole session was combat, but also the whole session was role play because like we don't break role play during combat, and it was all those kind of like cool situation, right, where we bust down a room and try to scare civilians so they run between us and the bad guy that we're fighting. Actually, we were the bad guy in that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that does not sound like.
And then or like we like take people as human shield. You know, those are kind of things like we're talking about using environment. There's this thing as well, like, you know, grab this guy using it as human shield, right? Have some consideration for those things. So
I actually want to belabor that point for just a moment, because that's something I've seen in multiple games over many years, is somebody using a human as a human shield, like a normal civilian. And I've got to say, if there's one faux pas that I see from game masters, is that all of a sudden these NPCs, this teenage kid, this old man, this random lady, whatever, all of a sudden turn into ninjas. And every time you're trying to use them as a human shield, they get away constantly. That's not how it works in the real world. If you actually look at the real world, most human shields, I'm not saying they die, but most human shields are very acquiescent to whatever the criminal or whatever wants. And I've got to say that I think more often than 50%, I see game masters, because I don't think they like it. Like, oh crap, you got me. Like, how do I do this? And I think that game masters kind of cop out sometimes. Like, oh, well, she rolls and she gets away. That's funny. I'm a fifth level fighter.
Right? You have to lean into it. Like the player just did something cool, right?
Right.
But we have like a crispy as game master. Like this traveler game was a game mastered by Rick from 28mm RPG. Those guys are great, right? So they just, you don't have to worry about that kind of shit with them.
Well, but part of this show is about advice and food for thought for folks too. So that might be like, oh, maybe I do. Because to be fair, there are some things that I've done in the past I didn't realize that. Oh, you know what? I'm kind of the problem in that one too. And,
that's something I often say. Like, don't cock block your player, right? When your player have a cool idea, right? Let them shine, right? Just like, that's cool, right? Enjoy it as well, right?
The flip side of that is players aren't always right, though. Just because you think you rationalized it well out here, remember, humans are emotional creatures, and sometimes your most persuasive fact speech doesn't matter at all.
No, I agree with that, but like, find like there can be like an in-world reason that it doesn't work, right?
Absolutely.
Like, and sometimes like just like you can have the best idea, the execution can be poor, right? Just so there's that as well. Yeah. Exactly.
There's a fine balance there, and as long as it's it makes sense for the world, I agree. But what you'll end up getting is and I know this from a history way back in the day in my AD&D second edition games back in the early 90s, where the players would come up with good ideas, but they were off the wall, and I didn't like it. So I would cock block them, as you'd say. And guess what they stopped doing? They stopped having good ideas.
Oftentimes, like I say, like people, like a lot of GM complain that they have like passive player. That's a common problem. And I say oftentimes you train them to be passive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's bad to say, but that it is what it is. That's what we're fighting against.
That's fair. All right. So any final commentary on what were we talking about here? Combat and tactics. I really thought we were going to dive into maybe not specific numbers, but maneuvers and numbers a little more. But that's fine. This went into a little bit different direction. I think that's cool. Anything else you guys want to say in combat and tactics, or are we ready to move on to the next?
I got two stories I just remembered.
Sure, go ahead.
One, I was running a Star Wars Saga Edition game, and I had these NPCs trying to break into the character ship. One guy's playing pretty much a Mandalorian with the jetpack and everything. As everybody's taking out all the mooks, he decides he's going to fire his jetpack off and go right at the leader and capture him.
Okay, did it work?
Yeah. Okay. Let him roll.
That is the story, man.
Oh no, I'm like a Banky in Mallrats when he's telling the story about the plane going down.
God.
The other one was I was running a 5th ed game at my game store back before the Transformer variant, and what we're doing Temple of Elemental Evil, the moat house from it, and they're going down this hallway. There's some bandit guards at the end of it, and my one player, he's playing a halfling that's kind of like a melee, but also has a shield. He decides he wants to be Captain America. Toss the shield down. Don't you? He rolled a 20.
Nice.
Of all things. Afterward, I was like, at one point,
Dice don't lie.
Yeah, at one point, when they're going up against the evil cleric, he's like, yeah, I want to slide between his legs and punch him in the balls or something, and then bring my shield up to defend myself. I'm like, okay, I think he missed the attack, but when guy went to attack him, he ended up hitting the shield. And at one point, I said, like, dude, it's getting to the point where I might as well give you weapon proficiency and shield. You'd be the halfling Captain America.
Cool. Let's read this. This is a Law Dog for $4.95 says adversarial GMs are the worst. Oh, you had a good idea. Fine. That human shield, the human shield is a 20th level retired adventurer. I will tell you, I have one caveat where I do this constantly. The character will always and forever be a 20th or 36th level if we're playing basic. I don't care. Fighter, thief, mage, cleric, dragon, whatever. And that's the bartenders in my fantasy games. And it's because too many players go up and they want to start shit right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And so they start fucking with the innkeeper. I'm partially joking, but partially not joking for people who are in my old AD&D games who might be listening. Because I was just so sick and tired of them browbeating the innkeepers constantly. Mm-hmm. Now, could I have gotten around that 3 million different ways, things better verisimilitude? Yes, and nowadays I probably would. But back then I was just like, I just want to get to what we're supposed to be doing, not deal with this nonsense of you walking. I'm not giving up my weapons. I'm sitting at that chair. Are you going to stop me? Give me some food. Things like that. Of course, it's like I said, it's really easy to put consequence on that. But I was younger and I just wanted to get to the adventure, so to speak. So I was like, you screw with the bartender, he's just going to kill you.
So he sets a drink down in front of you and spits in it and tells you have a nice day and walks away.
It's like saying that, like, oh, the bartender go to you and kill you. That's almost like a way of saying, like, you know what? You can take your thing and go.
Yeah.
At that point, right? Just like the player not going to be like, take the game seriously and take the game world seriously. That's the problem
right.
player.
No,
that's the GM is also the problem player.
That's absolutely fair. Now, I'm not lying in what I said, but I am over embellishing it. That was a long time ago, but it was the way it had to get done. Otherwise, we never left the inn and nobody had fun because, like, I thought we were going to do an adventure. I thought we were going to do something today other than just try to kill all the patrons and say, that's my table and give me some food, wench. It's like, so. That's fair. Barkeep should be retired adventurers. They earned it and deserve to rest and pour ale all day. You don't get combat wheelchairs. You get an awesome story about how you lost your legs, and people pay you to hear about it. And when you get grumpy, people like, hey, that's right, he's grumpy, but he's got a reason to be grumpy. He had his legs bitten off by a dragon. You haven't had,
Like this barkeep thing and bar fight thing, like remind me of the very first game of D&D I played, like long time ago, like 30 years ago, I guess, more than that maybe. Like I remember, like we were still young, right? And it was like the older brother of one of our friends that was running for us, introduced us to the hobby, right? And it started in the tavern, and then like a patron like run into this guy. The guy was a fighter, and he's like, the patron is looking rough a bit and is being a bitch, and the other kids say, well, I pulled my sword and I killed him. And then GM tried to say, well, you can't just do that, right? So you have to think, like, you can just kill somebody randomly and stuff like that. And then so the guys say, well, then I just cut his arm off. And then GM just went, you know what? I think we're just going to put that up for a little while.
And that trying to be Obi-Wan.
It's like, I think you're just a bit too young yet to be introduced. Yeah.
And that is a great story to end the segment on. Let's what we were talking about. We were talking about combat and tactics. I think we did in there somewhere, but combat and tactics are vital to the warrior. And if my suggestion is quite simply, hey, if you're playing a fighter, you're probably not, or a warrior, you're probably not the only one or the only person getting involved in the fight, but you're probably the best one at it. Help the other characters in character, but help the other characters to have a role so that you can keep them safe. You can be their protector and play your Earth Dawn. What do we do in the next one? Oh, in the last segment, in the last part, we're going to be talking about the evolution and adaptation. So how warriors evolve from level 1 or from no skill points up until level 36 or a whole ton of skill points. We'll talk about that in the next video.